Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Seeger. I'm Chief of the Waterway Construction Division here at the Maryland Department of the Environment, Wetlands, and Waterways program. We're here tonight for our public hearing on a permit application, but the first half hour here between 6:30 and 7 is what replaced what we used to do in person, what we called the poster session, which was the applicant would have their plans available and folks could mingle about in the room and ask questions about the regulated impacts and the project itself. So that's what this is meant to replace. So until 7 o'clock when we start the formal hearing, if anyone has a question of about the project, if they could raise their hand virtually on the dashboard, we'll unmute you and you can ask. And while we're doing that, I'll ask the applicant or their designee to please put up the plans for the project so that folks might be able to look at what you're showing and they might be able to ask questions.
We have a hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Mr. Scheibel, and you can ask your question. So I have unmuted you and you'll need to unmute yourself on your end as well. And then you'll be able to ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Great, thank you. I'm so used to the Zoom interface, webinar kind of throws me off now, but I can adjust. So my name's Danny Scheibel. I am a city council member from the city of Hyattsville, and I am going to a different event tonight that starts right at 7 o'clock. So I was hoping to get public comment in before then, but I don't have so much a question on the plans, but I was wondering, I just wanted to ask how you'll be doing the queue for the public comment, and if I'm going to be giving some public words at an event probably between 7 and 7:30, but after 7:30 I could log back in and try to give public comment then. Could you just give me an idea as to what that window for public comment will be, and if I log back in at 7:30, if I'll be available to give public comment then?
I certainly believe so. This is Bill Seeger with Wetlands and Waterways. First off, during the presentation, we usually give elected officials or their designees first spots for providing testimony, but if you want to do it later and log in, I imagine we'll certainly still be going at 7:30. If you want to come in then and raise your virtual hand, we'll recognize you as soon as we can.
Okay, that's perfect. Yes, that's what I'll do. I'll stay logged in for now, but I didn't have any questions other than that. So thank you for answering that, and thank you.
Sure.
All right, we have another hand raised. Ms. Irene Marsh. Ms. Marsh, I'm going to go ahead and excuse me, unmute you, and you'll need to unmute yourself on your end. So I have unmuted you from this end. If you can unmute from your end, there you go. You can go ahead and ask your question now. Ms. Marsh, I don't know if you're speaking, but we can't hear you. But it shows that you're unmuted on my end as well as yours. Okay, we still can't hear you. You can type something into the chat box and ask a question there.
And I do see a question there, Amanda, from Alexi Sanchez. Will you be going over the project design now or at 7 p.m.? There will be a formal presentation on the project, both by us at MDE and by the applicant as part of our formal hearing that starts at 7. This is just the precursor, if you will, of what we used to do when we did these in person.
Ms. March, I don't know if you saw the chat box information, but our IT staff advised that you leave the webinar and then rejoin it, try to rejoin it, and that might solve your audio issues. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you because we can't hear you. Next raised hand. Okay, the next raised hand is Mr. Smith, and I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now, Mr. Smith.
Yeah. Am I unmuted fully?
You are
Yes,
unmuted.
we can hear you.
Hi, everybody. So I kind of thought we were going to have video on this. Are we going to when we testify?
Video of you, or there's going to be video of, this is Bill Seeger, I'm the hearing officer when the hearing starts, and there will be video of me when I'm reading our presentation, but there will not be video of the attendees or anyone asking questions, no.
Oh man, I hate to deprive you all of getting to see me.
Anyway, I'm sorry, you got to be subjected to me, so.
No, there you go. Anyway, it's nice to finally talk after trading so many emails. So this project is rocking along, even though there are 2 core challenges in state courts. Even though Werrlein doesn't have a permit for what it needs to do or wants to do on the lower parcel. What happens if the city and the other plaintiffs prevail in court? And what happens if for some reason MDE either denies this permit or tells Werrlein it has to significantly alter its design? Is MDE going to tell Werrlein then it has to rethink its stormwater management for the upper parcel? And I asked because this question was brought up by our city council members, including Mr. Shively, in the spring of 2020. Werrlein's representative was refused to answer the questions, to the point that our mayor publicly rebuked him for being disrespectful to the city council. So we're kind of wondering when the rubber hits the road here. I mean, they've been violating for 2.5 years.
Well, I guess from a permitting perspective, from MDE's permitting perspective, all I can speak to is what we have before us tonight. And again, all this will be in my hearing speech starting at 7. But the non-tidal wetlands and the 100-year floodplain impacts are what they've applied to us for a wetlands and waterways permit for. And as you mentioned, at the end of this process, and what we've got to get through is the public comment part of the process, and then considering the public comments, just like you alluded to, at the end of that process, one of two things happen. They either will meet the requirements for our permit and will get it, or would be denied. And but of course, in between then, it's always a chance that the applicant can make amendments or adjustments to their permit application. Those kind of things can happen. I guess all I can speak to right now is that has not happened since this project has come in, and what you see on the screen right now is what they've applied to us for.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Marsh has rejoined the hearing. So Ms. Irene Marsh, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. And then if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please feel free to go ahead and ask it. You'll just have to unmute yourself on your end.
The mic looks green from my end. I don't know why we're not hearing anything.
No, we still can't hear you, Ms. Marsh. There is a chat box, and you can type in your question there if you'd like. Are your speakers turned on? Or is there a muted microphone on your laptop or device? Another option is you can phone in, and the phone in number has been posted in the chat box. For now, Ms. Marsh.
I don't know why.
I'm
Go
sorry?
ahead, Amanda. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was going to say for right now, I'm going to go ahead and remute you. We have another hand raised, and I'll unmute Mr. Smith next.
I was just trying to ask whether or not you showed Irene is unmuted on her end. I couldn't reach her by phone just now.
We're showing her as green, which at least from our end should be unmuted. I'm thinking and hoping it's something on her end, but
yeah.
Hi, this is Kate Majak, ND support staff. I posted the phone number to call in and the pin for the attendees to press. If Irene wants to try that, once she calls in, we can then send her her individual pin number that she can speak. Irene, it does sound like I'm hearing some feedback, so it does sound like you are having some audio issues at your end. If you click on your speaker icon on your computer and have a look, there may be an arrow, and you may need to select the correct speakers that you're using. Are they the built-in speakers or are they headphones that you're using? And if you select that, that should give you what you need. If not, I'd recommend using the phone number. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
I still show her as unmuted too.
Yes.
I see a question down in the box from Trey Sherrard, Anacostia Riverkeeper. Is anyone from the county government planning to attend? I can say from MDE's perspective, I don't know. We have it so that the attendees can see all the other attendees, but I guess I can just say typically they're not, I guess, formally invited to be part of our hearing, but they can certainly attend if they would like to.
We have a hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Mr. Smith.
My question is this, what's the next step after all the comments are filed? MDE will consider the comments. Will Werrlein be given a chance to respond to the comments, or is their opportunity done for now? And does MDE contemplate issuing a tentative determination, or would it move straight to a final determination?
Well, in Wetlands and Waterways program, we don't have tentative determinations. You're stealing a lot of my thunder from my speech, but let me go into
That's my whole point. Yeah.
What happens what happens here at the end. Well, certainly we are in the public comment phase of the permit application, which by the way, to steal thunder yet again, has been extended till January 15th, which is longer than our normal public comment period. But what happens after that is, and why it's important that we have a defined date to close the public comment period, is we, by regulation and statute, have 30 days from the close of the public comment period to make a determination as to whether we grant the permit or deny it. Or, as you said, they need to make modifications and then we reconsider it, if you will. So there's a lot of time periods that hinge upon this, the comment period and the close of the comment period. But yes, at the end of our process, and I'm using air quotes you can't see because I'm not on camera, but at the end of our process, we got to make a decision, and depending on what that decision is, then there's a chance for folks, be it the applicant if it's a denial, and someone else if it's an issuing of the permit and they don't agree with it, to challenge the permit.
May I ask another question?
Sure.
I don't understand the interplay between the courts and the court cases that are underway now, and potential for more court cases when it comes to Werrlein's plans for the lower parcel. In your decision, if for instance the Court of Special Appeals rules in favor of the plaintiffs in our challenge of the county's first illegal decision approving the conceptual site plan, what does MDE do? Does it simply continue? Does it continue considering this permit, or does it put things on hold?
Wait, you lost me there. But what we're considering is the impact to the 100-year floodplain and the non-tidal wetlands from this project. If as to whether those are acceptable under the regs and statute that we implement. If they are, then at the end of the process, applicants typically get an authorization for that. If they are not, then it gets denied. And if something else, if they need another permit from someone else or an approval from somewhere else that they can't or don't get, then they've just got our permit that, or a denial before them that is essentially they can't use, because I guess it's kind of moot if they're. I guess another way for me to say it is they gotta get all the authorizations they need and approvals they need, and if they don't get one of them, I'm stammering because I don't know. It doesn't mean our permit isn't valid. It just means they can't use it.
I'll just jump in and say that it's 6:55 and that the hearing will start at 7 o'clock. So if anyone has any last minute questions about the site plans that are on screen now, please feel free to ask your questions now in the next 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay. Trey Shepard has his hand raised. So Mr. Sherrod, I'm going to go ahead and, well, it's down now. Back up. I'm going to unmute you. Please unmute yourself from your end. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I didn't know how long I needed to stay up and what the muting situation was. So I'm Trey Sherrod, I'm Anacostia Riverkeeper. Following up on that last exchange, are there any differences in process when the applicant has demonstrated that they really aren't waiting for permits to do work, as has been the case on this site?
The only thing I can say in that regard is, yes, we're aware there's some enforcement action on this site from MDE, a different group at MDE that I can honestly say, I don't know where that stands in that process, but it is being addressed by our enforcement and compliance folks at MDE. But I also know at the same time that action is separate and apart from what we're doing here in permit world today.
Okay, great, thank you. So there is no, I guess, organ within MDE to kind of like communicate those two things. There's no additional level of scrutiny in those instances?
I guess my pinheaded permitting answer has to be we consider the same regulations are applying to this site, whether work has already commenced or whether this was a unimpacted site and they have yet to do the work, if that made sense.
We have 3 minutes and one more raised hand. Mr. Smith, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and you can unmute yourself on your end.
Thanks, Ms. Siegel. This is a related question. It's my understanding that an applicant's track record is supposed to be taken into account in determinations on industrial stormwater permits, or maybe it's my misunderstanding, but is that true for this kind of permit? Is the fact that Werrlein has been flagrantly violating, does the agency, the department take that into account at all when it's looking at their permit application and deciding whether or not to grant a permit to a proven bad actor?
Well, I can tell you it's probably no secret that the reason this application came in was because our compliance folks got involved with the site, and that's what necessitated a site visit out there, and then the findings that an application needed to be submitted. But while I say that, I can say that our compliance and enforcement folks, we haven't gotten any kind of direction that says, hold up on moving down permit path. At least as of right now, that's we're still going with our normal process.
Mr. Sherrod has raised his hand again. This will be the last question, I believe, before the hearing starts at 7. I'll go ahead and unmute you if you can unmute yourself on your end.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Following on that last statement, is there a tool in the enforcement group's toolbox that they can come to you and suggest that a pause needs to be put on permitting?
I don't honestly know. That'd be a question for them.
Thank you.
Okay, there are no other hands raised.
Thanks, Amanda. Well, let me take a sip and take over if I can do this correctly so that I can show myself. Am I there now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, let me leave that because I'm going to leave my speech up so that I can see myself. Now, how do I get my... Sorry, folks, still seeing me?
Still seeing you.
Thanks for the vote. Well, it's 7:01 by my clock on the laptop, and let me start the evening off. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this Maryland Department of the Environment public informational hearing for the proposed Werrlein WSSC LLC MDE application number 21-NT-0448/20 2021-61394. My name is William Seeger, and I'm Chief of the Waterway Construction Division here at the Maryland Department of the Environment. And for the remainder of this hearing speech, I'll just say department. I will be the presiding official for this evening's public informational hearing. And this evening's hearing is being held virtually using the GoToWebinar platform. If you are having any technical issues with the format, please write in the questions tab and our team will assist you. Attending the hearing with me from the department tonight are Amanda Sigolito, Chief of the Non-Tidal Wetlands Division, Jeff Thompson, Chief of the Central Region for the Non-Tidal Wetlands Division, Galen Milligan, Project Manager, Central Region, Non-Tidal Wetlands Division, and Ryan Din, Project Manager for the Waterway Construction Division. The department appreciates both your interest and participation in this comment process. If there is anyone who is not registered for the public hearing and you wish to be included as an interested party, please contact Ryan Din at ryan.din, it's ryan.din @maryland.gov or 410-537-4247. And after my presentation here, I'll put up a slide that has all our contact information on it about the project. So I think that will help. Only those individuals who have registered for the public hearing or requested to be an interested party or who have submitted written comments during the public comment period will be considered an interested party and be placed on the interested party list for this project. The list will be used to notify you of the department's final decision, and additionally, it will be used to provide you with a copy of our hearing report. The formal hearing record will remain open until 5 p.m. on January 15th, 2022. It is the responsibility of my office to evaluate applications that propose impacts to non-tidal wetlands and waterways. The department's authority is found in subtitles 5 and 9 of the Environment article, and each application received through our regulatory program has specific and unique issues and impacts that must be considered in relation to weighing the potential benefits and detriments of the project. The department is neither a proponent nor opponent of any project. The logistics for this evening's hearing are as follows. First, I'll make a few opening remarks about the purpose of the public informational hearing and briefly list the proposed impacts. Next, I will call on the applicant or their representative to make the applicant's statement regarding their project. And after these required presentations, the department will facilitate public statements by first calling on any elected officials or the representatives to make a statement, and then calling on anyone else who indicates that they wish to speak. It is not necessary to read a statement to make it part of the official record. Written comments will also be accepted up until the close of the comment period and receive the same consideration as any oral statement made tonight. In fact, for accuracy, if you have a letter to read into the record, I suggest you also provide us with a copy of the letter. While we will not permit cross-examination of the speakers during their presentations tonight, you may pose questions as part of your statement for our consideration in our permit evaluation. Tonight's hearing is being recorded. Although the department will not transcribe the tapes, the recording will be used to facilitate the final permit decision. If the applicant or a hearing participant would like to request a transcript, the person requesting the transcript must pay the cost of transcription. And in addition, the department is posting this hearing on MDE's YouTube channel. The project, Werrlein WSSC LLC, 522 Defense Highway, Annapolis, Maryland, has applied for the redevelopment of a vacant Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission administrative facility and associated parking lots into a single-family residential subdivision with associated infrastructure. The applicant has also proposed to provide floodplain compensation for the area being filled. The project will permanently impact 498 square feet of non-tidal wetland, 4,914 square feet of the 25-foot non-tidal wetland buffer, and 2.36 acres of the 100-year non-tidal floodplain. The project is proposed on the northwest branch of the Anacostia River, a Use 1 waterway. The project location is 4017 Hamilton Street, Hyattsville, Maryland, at the intersection of 40th Place and Gallatin Street in Prince George's County. The department is conducting this evening's public informational hearing pursuant to subsection 5-204 of Environment Article and Code of Maryland Regulations 26.23.02.02 and 26.17.04.13. The purpose of this public informational hearing is for the applicant to present an analysis of impacts that may be associated with the proposed activity. And I would like to emphasize that the purpose of this public informational hearing is to consider the application pending before the department. There may be a number of additional concerns related to issues that are beyond the scope of this particular hearing. I would like to have this hearing remain focused on the Wetlands and Waterways permit application pending before the department. So I would like to begin tonight's hearing with a presentation by the applicant, during which microphones will be muted until the conclusion of the presentation. So please hold all public comments or statements until I ask for them later in this public hearing. So I would ask now that the applicant or the representative please present the proposed project, and the presenter please introduce yourself and begin your presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sharon Freeland. As I'm going to pull up my screen that you've seen already, but as mentioned, the existing site is, well, as of April 2018, it had buildings and a parking lot. And so the area that we're most concerned with is this parking lot on the southwestern side. But the residential development is, sorry, you took some of my information. I'm trying to skip around. So let's do this. The site contained the existing abandoned buildings and pavement. The existing site has 5.8 acres of impervious, and so combined on these two parcels is 5.8 acres of impervious area, and as shown, post-development will contain only 3.5 acres of impervious. So we're reducing the amount of impervious, and we are providing water quality treatment where there was no water quality treatment of the 5.8 acres that was there previously. So the existing parking area, this is the floodplain boundary line for the existing conditions before development, and fill will be placed to raise this area up out of the floodplain. And because Prince George's County Code requires an equal amount of cut provided as there is fill in the floodplain, that you provide additional compensatory storage, that area is provided here. So, you know, the requirement by Prince George's County is more restrictive than the regulations by either MDE or FEMA. So we went through the floodplain waiver request process in Prince George's County and went through their county code and addressed all of the items in the code and provided the hydrologic and hydraulic calculations. This area is so far away from the actual stream itself that this area is considered hydraulically what's considered ineffective flow, meaning that it's not part of the calculations of the flood carrying capacity of the stream itself. So with the calculations that already existed, these weren't something that we created, we updated the information, but the way that it was already in by FEMA, this area is ineffective flow. So filling in the area without providing the compensatory storage did not increase the floodplain elevation, but we provided the additional cut anyway as part of the requirement for Prince George's County. So we've gone through all of those requests, and we've received the floodplain fill waiver from Prince George's County. And the other item that was mentioned was the wetland impacts. Again, this is the portion of the site. The wetlands are just at the bottom edge of the property. And if I can get it to switch pages on me, there we go. The wetland impacts are really only associated with replacing the existing storm drain outfall pipe, and you know, a little bit with the retaining wall construction. So we included all of it within the LOD, although some of it may not actually be disturbed, but just in case things were in that way. I believe that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you. This is the time when I would normally acknowledge any elected officials, but I don't think our council person's back yet. So let me get this thing off my screen first. Let's see if I can get back to my speech. Okay, so let's jump right now to, I guess since at the beginning part of tonight's hearing, you were familiar with raising your hand. I guess now we'll go first to folks who want to make a statement for the record. If you'll raise your hand now, in the meantime, I'll try to put that slide up that gives our contact information and shows the MDE's address and the contact information for Ryan to get in comments up to and including the end of the comment period. But if you'll raise your hands, want to make a statement, we'll unmute you. And I will say, please start by clearly stating your name and any interest you may be representing. And in order that all persons who wish to speak tonight have an opportunity to do so, we appreciate you summarizing your statements and limiting your speaking to no more than 3 to 5 minutes, please. So let me get.
Bill Marine Fine was the first hand up. I've unmuted you, Ms. Fine. If you can unmute yourself on your end, you can make your.
Yes, am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay. So my name's Maureen Fine. I live in Bowie, Maryland, and I am not representing a group. I am in opposition to Magruder Suffrage Point receiving a permit to build in a floodplain. As a grandparent who gets deeply disheartened when leaders and regulatory agencies abrogate responsibility to address the climate crisis, and as a Prince George's County resident who has contributed to the development of the Prince George's County Climate Action Plan, I say that developers cannot be allowed to build in floodplains, period. It's against the advice of county, state, and federal policies. It's contrary to the mission of MDE, which is to protect and restore the environment for the health and well-being of all Marylanders. Allowing destruction of floodplains is not protecting and restoring the environment. Protecting and restoring floodplains is essential for the health and well-being of our communities. Prince George's County's Plan 2035, adopted in 2014, states that floodplains need to be part of an interconnected network of significant environmental features that provide valuable ecosystem services. Flooding is already a major concern for many residents, and floods are expected to become more frequent and severe. Today's engineering standards may not be adequate in the future. The Prince George's County Climate Action Plan says we must stop the practice of permitting the reconfiguring of floodplain storage areas within a natural riverine system by creating man-made storage to accommodate development. Let's protect and restore our floodplains and strengthen land use and zoning regulations to ensure that development is not occurring in floodplains. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next hand up is from Lee Kane. And so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you can unmute yourself on your end.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I'll try to be quick and fit this in the time allotted. First, I want to say within a few hundred feet of this development and stormwater problem is the most ecologically sensitive habitat within the city of Hyattsville. This is the bog at Driscoll Park. The Trumbull Trail, a boardwalk through a haven of biodiversity, has been invested in by the city of Hyattsville volunteers and nonprofits for decades. It is the only one of its kind in Hyattsville, and while small, it is considered an ecological gem within the Beltway. This habitat is potentially threatened by the changes in stormwater flow from the development occurring at this location. This could threaten the stream bed with excessive erosion and also the habitat by altering the hydrology of the area and potentially dry up other areas that rely on wet conditions. It's not just critical for owls and salamanders. This is a well-traveled and visited location and loved place for residents. And it's an escape for all of us and a benefit to our mental and physical health. People come here to take walks in the woods and de-stress. And the pandemic further revealed the necessity of preserving locations such as this, shown in park visitation data throughout the region during the spring of 2020. As a stormwater management professional, I can say that stormwater management and understanding of such isn't a strong suit of the Werrlein developer, as was shown by their attempt to gift the city of Hyattsville back a portion of land closest to Driscoll Park. This being the stormwater detention pond labeled here as compensatory flood storage they've created to manage stormwater. The act demonstrates their lack of understanding and how to manage stormwater, and therefore absolves any confidence in their ability here to understand the implications of building in a floodplain and at the bottom of a large watershed. This is the area where much of the city of Hyattsville drains into, for those who don't know. Most of us already have wet basements, and we all live uphill. Fill is not going to help the issue of being at the bottom of a drainage basin. The only other explanation for this act of attempting to gift us, the residents, with a stormwater pond is that Werrlein wishes to offload this cost and responsibility of a doomed to fail stormwater management feature onto the city of Hyattsville and Maryland taxpayers. They didn't obtain the state federal permits necessary to begin work in a floodplain, but they began work anyway. We watched it happen between May and July this year. They've been violating permits for the past couple of years on this project. This demonstrates their intent to cut corners at any cost of taxpayers
30
and
seconds.
clients who would purchase these homes. It is up to the state to protect both of these parties. Thank you.
Thank you. The next hand that is raised is Lee Altman. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you could unmute on your end.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Lee Altman. I live in Hyattsville, Maryland. I'm just a resident. I'm not representing any other auspices. With the growing cost and impacts of climate-related disasters, the plan provides recommendations on how Prince George's can invest in green infrastructure and programs, such as renewable energy, smart growth communities, low carbon transportation, and resilient water systems. These words are taken from Prince George's County Climate Action Plan. I couldn't agree with them more. I'd like to emphasize in particular the mention of smart growth communities and resilient water systems. I fail to see how granting a MDE permit for development in or closely adjacent to a 100-year floodplain meets either of these goals. As we can all see from our own personal perspective and from ever-increasing news cycles, the intensity and frequency of severe weather events is progressing unabated. Weather patterns labeled as 100-year events have become anything but, and we find ourselves in ever quicker series of extreme weather. I've been a resident of Hyattsville now for 26 years. A lot has changed in that time. I've seen an area that was woefully underserved become an area that is now seen as a destination with many amenities. I am a proponent of smart infill development, done in a manner which is both thoughtful and intelligent. Development like this can help to try and stem the pattern of urban sprawl. Let us not, however, in our zeal to provide so-called improvements to the county, knowingly create housing which is at high risk of taking future unsuspecting residents of our neighborhood by surprise and inflicting undue hardship upon them because of our knowing lack of foresight. I imagine that the Werrlein developer will offer that they have plans to mitigate future flooding issues at the property in question. In my opinion, this is a false promise and one full of hubris. I watched a new Werrlein house build on Farragut Street this past year. At this site, the Werrlein developer cut through existing drainage pipes from an adjacent park water mitigation system. These pipes were left to hang severed and aimed directly toward the new foundation of the house. I then watched as multiple rain events flooded the basement of the property. After each weather event, Werrlein's response was
30 seconds.
Was to pump muddy water from the basement of the property out into Farragut Street and down toward storm drains, flowing into tributaries and ultimately into the Chesapeake Bay. In my opinion, it is wrong to entrust an area already known to be complex and at risk for regular flooding events to any developer, least of all entrusted to a developer who has shown poor judgment already in water mitigation strategies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next hand that is raised is Amanda Eisen. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you can unmute on your end.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. My name is Amanda Eisen. I am a resident of Hyattsville. I live at 4028 Hamilton Street, so I'm directly across the street from this project. I am not an expert in stormwater management, but I'm just here to give my opinion, which is that I am against the development in the floodplain being proposed by Werrlein Properties. First and foremost, I'm concerned that the rapid growth of housing development in Hyattsville has already outpaced our public resources and our green space. The addition of these homes and townhomes will place an additional burden on Hyattsville's already crowded roads, our parks, and our public schools. I'm particularly concerned about the higher density townhomes proposed for the lower lot where the parking lot is, which, as we've noted, is in the 100-year floodplain. Climate change is real. It is happening. We're already seeing flooding at the entrance to the park every time there's a significant rainstorm. I know because it's the bottom of the street where I live. I experienced flooding in my basement last fall during a thunderstorm. I believe this area was zoned as open space for a reason, and I feel that our community would be best served by converting the lower lot to additional parkland. Driscoll Park is the city's largest green space. I'm concerned that the proposed high-density townhomes will significantly alter the look, feel, and accessibility of the park. When raised high enough to mitigate for their location in the floodplain, these homes will loom over the playground, the tennis courts, the ball fields, blocking the view of the sky and making the park feel like the private backyards of our new neighbors, rather than the shared public resource that it is now. I would also thank you for putting the map back up, because I also wanted to point out that this proposed compensatory flood storage area is located directly adjacent, if not partially overlapping, an existing heavily used playground. This seems ill-advised and potentially unsafe to me. I am deeply concerned that Werrlein has already violated Maryland's environmental laws by operating in the floodplain without the proper permits and allowing sediment from the construction site on the upper lot to pollute the northwest branch of the Anacostia River. I do not understand why the county and state have allowed this to happen. Given its prime location directly adjacent to our largest open green space, I
30
feel that
seconds.
consideration should be given to the public value added by this project. So far, it seems to me that the only people who are benefiting from this project are the developers and the wealthy people who are buying these homes. So I therefore urge you to consider conserving the lower lot for open space for to improve climate resiliency, wildlife habitat, and much needed open recreational space for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. Anybody else? Oh, Mr. Smith.
All right, you're unmuted on my end. If you can unmute on your end, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, before we start, how much time do I have? Do I have 5 minutes or 3?
You'll have 5.
Okay, so before I
Because you're
start.
representing a group, correct?
Yes, and before I
Yes.
start, I'd just like to thank you all for your efforts to share information with us over the last couple of months. I know you're not overstaffed and over budgeted, so thank you very much.
Thank you for recognizing that.
Of course. Good evening, Mr. Seeger, Ms. Sigalito, Ms. Correa, Mr. Dan, and Ms. Nelson, and good evening to my friends and neighbors. I'm Greg Smith. I respectfully urge the department to deny Werrlein's application for a non-title wetlands permit. At the very least, based on Werrlein's years of flagrant violations, the department should suspend consideration of this application. Ms. Sigalito, I remember you from the days that you and I were commenting on the Intercounty Connector Environmental Impact Statement. In 96 and 97, a quarter century ago, others and I raised concerns about climate change and evidence of climate change was bringing more intense storms. The state ignored our concerns then. 25 years later, the climate normals update that NOAA published this summer shows that annual rainfall between 1990 and 2020 had risen significantly over the annual rainfalls between 1980 and 2010. I live near the project site and I serve on the board of Sustainable Hyattsville. Sustainable Hyattsville and many of its members are parties to legal challenges before the Court of Special Appeals, where we're challenging the county district council's unlawful approval of Werrlein's conceptual site plan. Many of our members also are parties to a legal challenge in the circuit court, where we're challenging the planning board's unlawful approval of Werrlein's preliminary plan of subdivision for the upper parcel. The city of Hyattsville opposes this project and is also challenging those decisions. Werrlein has advanced this project only by breaking the laws over and over again, and they generally have been allowed to by county agencies that have failed to follow and enforce the law. Werrlein filed this application months late, and the application and supporting documentation contained clear errors. Werrlein filed only after Sustainable Hyattsville alerted the department that Werrlein was operating without permits, and only after the department made it clear to Werrlein that it needed to apply. Werrlein has flagrantly and repeatedly violated county, state, and federal laws since July of 2019. They've done so largely with impunity and with clear contempt for those laws and for neighboring communities and the environment. And they've essentially been rewarded for ignoring and violating the law. We've been hearing since at least July that MDE was preparing an enforcement action, and yet we've heard nothing, and Werrlein continues. MDE has known since late May that Werrlein was operating without state federal permits. Sustainable Hyattsville and its volunteer members have documented for MDE Werrlein's violations going back to July of 2019. We've sent MDE photos, videos, maps, satellite maps, and background documents. Rather than approving this permit, the department should levy the maximum penalties available under the law and refer Werrlein to the Attorney General's environmental crime units. Any homeowner who violated at even a scintilla of this level would have been shut down and taken to court by the county and or the state, yet Werrlein continues. As you consider whether to grant this permit, please take into account the following facts. In early to mid-July 2019, Werrlein and its contractor began to demolish historic WSSC buildings despite having no valid demolition permit. Rather than penalize Werrlein for its flagrant violation, DPI issued an ephemeral and meaningless stop work order that immediately issued Werrlein an extension on a permit that expired more than 10 months prior and that may have been improperly issued to begin with. From my perspective, that means you should look very closely at any approval granted by the county to Werrlein. Werrlein also appears to have violated state and federal laws by failing to notify MDE and EPA that it planned to demolish a building that once contained asbestos, and that may still have contained asbestos at the time of demolition. During the summer and fall of 2019, Werrlein demolished a building, ground it up on site, and left multiple massive piles of soil mixed with demolition waste on the site, completely exposed to wind and precipitation. There is some chance that that demolition waste contained or contains asbestos, PCBs, and other toxic materials, and that's what they're using as fill. During that demolition, Werrlein graded and grubbed a large area of soil, then left that soil as well as those massive piles unstabilized and fully exposed to wind and precipitation. They also dumped a significant amount of material on the floodplain. Werrlein had no county
30 seconds.
Thank you. Lacked approvals for required stormwater plans, and had never applied for required state federal permits. During multiple storms in the spring and summer 2020 and several storms in 2021, Werrlein discharged sediment pollution into the Northwest Branch by a primary tributary. MDE and US EPA listed the Northwest Branch in Anacostia as impaired for multiple pollutants and degraded conditions. On or about May 13th of this year, Werrlein began to regrade the upper parcel and expose large areas of soils. They also cut down trees.
Thank you. We need to move on to the next speaker. Mr. Graham, I'm going to go ahead. You've got your hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you can unmute from your end.
I see a green microphone. Mr. Graham?
Oh, hello. I'm sorry.
There you are. We can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, great. My name is Mark Graham. I live at 38th Avenue in Hyattsville, and I would like to speak against this project. Other speakers before me have spoken rather eloquently on the reasons why it's a bad project. I don't have too much else to add to that except to say that from my standpoint as someone who lives very close to this property on 38th Avenue in Hyattsville and who walks through that park almost every day, I use the Trumbull Trail, my wife and I, when we walk through there. The park is a great benefit to the community from a social, cultural, recreational, and particularly an environmental point of view. It's one of the only large green spaces we have in Hyattsville. Clearly, the best thing would be to incorporate the property that Werrlein wants to develop into the park, but to turn this area into housing would be an environmental disaster, in my view. It would benefit no one, as another speaker said rather nicely, except for the developer. And as Mr. Smith has noted, the developer has not shown himself to need any more benefits given their actions. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is
Mr. Sherrard.
Trey Sherrard. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now. If you can unmute from your end.
Thank you so much. My name is Trey Sherrod. I am the Anacostia Riverkeeper, and I am speaking for a nonprofit. We are a membership organization. A lot of our members live in Prince George's County. Half of the Anacostia River's watershed is in Prince George's County. The Northwest Branch is one of the two biggest tributaries that come together to form the Anacostia River up at the top of the tidal and navigable river. I want to echo the points made by all of the previous speakers, particularly Mr. Smith. Werrlein, in this case, has a pretty well documented history, not only and specifically with this site, of complete and utter disregard for the law, in particular the environmental laws, federal, state, and county. Given that, I don't have any faith in them whatsoever to do what they are suggesting they're going to do and to do it right, since they've already proven that they want to do it wrong. Anacostia Riverkeeper adamantly opposes this project, and we hope that your group finds there is no cause to give them a permit, particularly given the detriments they've already done to the floodplain and the potential harms to wetland. As some other earlier speakers noted, this goes absolutely against all of the county's plans and most of the best guidance nationally and certainly across the Chesapeake Bay region regarding floodplains, building in floodplains, climate change. You know, we know for a cold hard fact now that the 100-year storm is the 5-year storm or the 20-year storm, depending on which little subwatershed you want to look in. We know for a cold hard fact that we expect to see bigger and bigger storm events, and we know that our regulations are lagging behind. So what is a sufficiently compensatory flood storage unit now on paper is absolutely not going to be sufficient, and we know that. It's been shown time and time again. Given those knock-on effects to wetland and to habitat and everything else, Anacostia Riverkeeper is one of those parties opposing this project in all of the ways we can with Sustainable Hyattsville and Mr. Smith, and we're going to continue to do so. We hope that MDE joins us, not only the enforcement branch, but we hope that the wetlands permitting branch comes in and is able to help stop this project. Thank you all for the time.
Thank you.
The next hand raised is Daniel Muth. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute from your end, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Daniel Muth. I'm a resident of Hyattsville. I'm not going to go on here just because, you know, our previous speakers have said so much about this project. Other than to note that, yeah, the top left corner of your picture here isn't current because that parking lot's already been removed and work has already been done on this site, and probably would still be going on had not members of this community alerted various state officials that no permit had been granted for this before the work began. And that's just but one, as people have noted, of many of the presumptuous characteristics of this particular developer who seems to operate from a stance of asking for forgiveness rather than permission, which is about the worst way you can go about planning in any significant municipality, and is certainly not the way we want to see planning done within the boundaries of our community, Prince George's County or Maryland in general. Other people have already mentioned that there is no best practice as enumerated in the county governance or the state governance that recommends putting a development like this in the floodplain. It's kind of silly to look at it right now to see how elevated it would be above a large compensatory flood storage basin, as others have mentioned, is going to be completely inadequate given the changes that our environment is seeing at a rapid pace. And it's not hard to suppose that any development of this type that is granted today is going to be an externality to the community tomorrow. We can see it affecting the park, which is a great community resource. We can see it affecting the local sensitive ecological areas, which are great biodiversity and ecosystem services areas. We can see it affecting all sorts of things in negative ways, and yet we can't see any particular benefit of cramming this many townhomes into a floodplain, particularly by the hand of a developer who has shown rather utter contempt for our environmental laws and best practices. Infill is good. Most of the people that are speaking here today are for sensible infill of our communities because we understand that that leads to more drivable and walkable and public facilities that are better for the environment. Stupid development is not good, and I think any cursory glance at this map could demonstrate that this is exactly what's going on here. I am against this and would like that noted on the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next hand up is Dan. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you on this end, if you can unmute from your end.
Okay, I think, am I now?
You are. Go
Yes.
ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm Dan Smith, and I'm also representing Friends of Lower Beaver Dam Creek. an organization advocating for healthy waters and watershed practices in the largest subwatershed in the Anacostia. I would like to affirm the testimony and support the testimony of previous speakers, beginning with Maureen Fine, the first speaker. With climate change accelerating and having such impacts, MDE must be increasingly rigorous in reviewing applications to reduce the capacity of non-tidal wetlands and floodplains, and of the ability to restore them. So we may have some degraded areas. That is not cause alone to further develop those. We should be looking at and reserving the opportunity to restore the functioning to these areas. So we look to you as the people's agent to uphold the law and to help apply it as rigorously and creatively as possible for the purpose it is intended. We're not asking you to, use the law for other reasons, but you have a grave responsibility, and we respect that and have and look to you for that. So in addition to the points made, I ask about the alternatives analysis that was or maybe wasn't done by the developer with this application. It is my understanding that the alternatives need to be reviewed, assessed, a study needs to be done and submitted to MDE that would show the developer has looked at alternative sites in the area for the entire project. And that if they say there are not acceptable ones, then they have to show cause, and then you have to affirm that it is in the greatest public interest to develop this on this site, compromising and impacting these environmental features. And the second, within the site, there needs to be an alternative design analysis showing that they have looked at alternative ways to minimize their objective of developing the site with however many units, that they have looked at ways that would minimize the impact on the floodplain and the non-tidal wetlands. So I would ask that you rigorously apply that part of the law and explain to us, if you should grant or not grant, what the standard is that you use for an adequate alternatives analysis. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and just lack of knowledge and ignorance about that provision of the law, and it's incumbent upon MDE to help the public and the developers understand what they must do to provide, to look at alternatives, to do everything possible to develop without having further impacts on these incredibly important natural areas. And then furthermore, I do urge MDE and your leadership to review the standards that are currently used, and with an eye toward how are they adequate for the reality of the weather events that we have now? I don't think so. I think you would agree. And I would urge you as the leadership in this area to provide guidance for the state legislators, for the administration, for the public, for what could be done, should be done, needs to be done to improve the standards and update the regulations for the climate that we see today and the climate that we're likely to see in
30
20,
seconds.
50 years. So with that, thank you, and I look forward to your rigorous review of this project.
Thank you. Is that it for hands raised, folks? And I don't see our council person back.
We do have one
Uh,
hand raised, Alexis
all right.
Sanchez. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute from your end, please. You should be, go ahead. You should be able to speak now.
Looks green, you should be on. Just went red again. No, now it's green. I can hear you very faintly.
Very faintly?
Yes.
Oh, should I give it my best shot?
Yes,
better.
that's better now. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Alexis Sanchez, a 20-plus year resident of Hyattsville. I live just a few blocks away from this site, and I've watched the construction going on for the last few months. And I just wanted to say, without understanding all the nuance of the permitting process, that the fact that Werrlein has gone ahead with construction, because these images you're showing are not accurate. This site is already under construction. Without the requisite state permits from MDE should be enough of a reason to oppose the project, given the developer's blatant disregard and disrespect for MDE, for you folks, and the city. The city opposes this development. The county opposes development in the floodplain. I oppose this development. Thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you. Any others there, Amanda? I didn't. Seeing none, let me, and I don't see our council person back. Let me tell all where we go from here. Our hearing record will remain open until 5 p.m. on January 15th, 2022. The public comments received during the comment period will become part of the project file and will be considered by the department when rendering a decision on the application. I do want to add that we also got the questions that were written in the questions box during the public hearing, and they will also be part of the record as well. The department's decision will be a final agency determination. There will be no further opportunity for administrative review. Any person withstanding who is either the applicant or who has participated in the public participation process through the submission of written or oral comments may petition for judicial review in circuit court. The petition for judicial review must be filed within 30 days of the publication of our permit decision. The department appreciates your interest in this project and attendance at this evening's hearing. And happy holidays, everyone. And this hearing is now adjourned.